My name is Olivia Walker. I live in the suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota, with my husband and our 10-year-old son. As a freelance graphic designer working from home, my days revolve around managing my work while taking care of my son Joshua's school runs. We lived peacefully in our house surrounded by white picket fences, at least until that day. I chose to work from home because I wanted to be present for my son's growth. My routine includes sending Joshua off to school in the morning and fitting in design work between his afternoon baseball practice. With an annual income of around $70,000, combined with my husband's earnings, we weren't living luxuriously, but our life was fulfilling. My husband Nathan had been building his career as an account manager at a major advertising agency. His salary had increased to $90,000, and he was highly regarded at work, the ideal husband supporting our family. On the surface, anyway. Tall and mild-mannered, he was well trusted by his colleagues. He had a habit of wearing navy suits on presentation days, and I would always pick out his tie. Our son Joshua is in 4th grade at the local elementary school. With his bright and friendly personality, he's popular in his class. He plays second base on the baseball team and looked forward to nothing more than weekend practice sessions with his father. He excels particularly in math and says he wants to become a cool businessman like his father when he grows up. He sometimes helps with my work too, showing remarkable design sense. We met 10 years ago at a friend's wedding. I was working as a wedding planner's assistant, and Nathan was the groom's college best friend. I was immediately taken by his gentle smile and sincere character. Our first date was at a jazz concert at First Avenue. That night, he told me, "When I'm with you, I can be my true self." After 6 months of dating, we got married. We started our newlywed life in a modest suburban apartment. We shared our dreams and supported each other, moving forward one step at a time. Though our wedding was small, I'll never forget the wedding cake made by a wonderful pastry chef we met at Caribou Coffee. Our honeymoon was a modest 2-night trip to Duluth due to budget constraints, but the happiness we felt then wasn't any less than if we'd taken a luxurious vacation. And now, we live in a quiet suburban neighborhood of Minneapolis, in a house with a $2,000 monthly mortgage. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a spacious backyard, perfect for Joshua to play with his friends. We had managed to save $60,000 and were steadily preparing for future college expenses and retirement. From my home office, I could see Nathan and Joshua practicing baseball in the backyard on weekends. Watching them was my greatest joy. Our monthly family dinner tradition involved making hot dish, a Minnesota tradition, with ingredients from the local Byerly's. After dinner, we'd play board games or look through family photos. Those simple moments were our precious treasures. But recently, subtle changes began appearing in our daily life. Nathan started working overtime more frequently, saying he'd be late 3 or 4 times a week. At first, I didn't question his explanation about a big project coming in. Weekend work increased, and family time definitely decreased. I also noticed he became inseparable from his phone. He even started taking it into the shower with him, and his expression would soften every time he looked at the screen. As his wife, I didn't miss these subtle changes. My son started mumbling things like, "I wish I could play baseball with Dad," which broke my heart. Though I understood my husband's busy work schedule, I couldn't shake off a feeling that something was wrong. The small sighs in the middle of the night, my husband's increasing weekend outings, and our diminishing conversations, everything was changing slowly but surely. Our weekend shopping at Mall of America, baseball games at Target Field, and picnics at Lake Calhoun gradually became mere memories. Weekends became filled with emergency meetings and important deadlines, and my heart ached every time I saw Joshua's lonely profile. As family conversations decreased and I watched Nathan constantly checking his phone during dinner, a vague anxiety grew within me. But none of us could have imagined the truth that awaited us. In the spring of our 10th year of marriage, an event occurred that would dramatically change our lives. At 2:17 a.m., a phone call broke the silence. "Mrs. Walker, this is Dr. Smith, the doctor on duty at Mayo Clinic. Your husband has been in a car accident." In that moment, I felt the blood drain from my face. My mind went blank, and I almost dropped the receiver. I quickly called my mother-in-law who lived nearby to watch over the sleeping Joshua. The spring night in Minneapolis was still chilly. I hastily put on a coat and drove to the hospital. It was a single-vehicle accident. His life isn't in danger. How relieved I felt at the doctor's words. But I didn't know yet that this was just the beginning of a long nightmare. At the hospital, a doctor in his mid-40s was waiting in the emergency room. "I'm Dr. David Martin, a neurologist," he introduced himself with an unusually calm demeanor. "Your husband fortunately has no major injuries. However," made my heart leap again. "There's a possibility of memory loss. We're currently conducting detailed tests." When I was shown to the hospital room, my husband looked at me as if I were a stranger. He had a small wound on his forehead and scrapes on his arm, but indeed, there appeared to be no major injuries. "Who are you?" Those words felt like cold rain drenching my entire body. "Nathan, it's me. Olivia. I'm sorry. I can't remember." The next few hours felt like a bad dream. According to the doctor, he might be experiencing temporary memory loss from the accident's impact. However, strangely enough, his memories about work seemed to remain vivid. "I'm an account manager at an advertising agency. We have a presentation for a major auto manufacturer this week." Something about my husband's expression as he spoke seemed unnaturally natural. The next morning, I brought Joshua to the hospital room. "Dad. Are you okay?" My husband showed a confused expression at our son's voice. "You're my son, aren't you?" Those words brought tears to Joshua's eyes. But strangely, from that day forward, my husband and son's relationship began to improve rapidly. His hospital stay began, and I visited every day. The private room was covered by insurance, and the nurses were kind. On the surface, everything seemed fine. But something was off. That sense of wrongness grew stronger day by day. First, it was strange that only his work memories remained extremely clear. He remembered colleagues' names, ongoing project details, and even client appointments. Meanwhile, memories of our wedding and precious moments with our son were completely gone. Then there were the frequent private conversations with Dr. Martin. I witnessed them talking alone for long periods, even outside of examination hours. The nurses' behavior was also concerning. They would wear apologetic expressions whenever they saw my husband. There were unknown visitors outside visiting hours. I saw shadows signing in at the nurses' station, but strangely, there were no records in the visitor log. My husband's cell phone was also suspicious. His expression would brighten every time he looked at the screen. But when I approached, he would hurriedly turn it off. As his memories supposedly returned, his relationship with our son improved rapidly. It might have been even better than before the accident. They would play board games in the hospital room on weekends, or he would help with homework. While these scenes were certainly heartwarming, something felt manufactured. That sense of wrongness never left my heart. About 2 weeks into his hospital stay, my vague suspicions suddenly turned into certainty. That day, Joshua's baseball practice was unexpectedly canceled. "Let's surprise Dad with a visit," my son innocently suggested, and I nodded. At that moment, I couldn't have imagined what we would witness at the hospital. On our way to my husband's room, where he was supposed to be meeting with his doctor, we passed by the examination room. The door was slightly open, and voices came from inside. In that moment, all the mysteries connected with cruel clarity. The examination room door was slightly ajar. "Dad will be so happy." My son's innocent smile made what was about to happen even more cruel. My husband's voice leaked from the examination room. "How long do I have to keep up this act? My wife is getting suspicious." "Just a bit longer. It's natural for memories to return gradually. I want to end this soon. Ashley's pregnancy is starting to show. Don't worry about my sister." In that moment, it felt like the world had stopped. My breathing became difficult, and my vision distorted. I instinctively covered my son's ears with both hands. "Joshua, wait here." "Mom," I heard Dad's voice. I wanted to protect him from hearing this cruel truth. I wanted to shield him from it for as long as possible. The thought squeezed my chest. From the shadow of the hallway, I watched my husband and the doctor emerge from the examination room. It felt like I was controlling someone else's body. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then, a woman walked down the hallway. "Ashley, glad you could make it." Ashley Martin, a Chicago Business School graduate who had joined as my husband's subordinate a year ago. The doctor's sister. And my husband's lover. Under her loose dress, a small bump was clearly visible. "I know her." My son's voice interrupted my thoughts. "She was at Dad's company Christmas party. Remember, Mom?" Memories raced through my mind like a film reel. Last December's Christmas party. Her elegant smile beside my husband. I hadn't noticed anything then, but looking back, there was already a secret between them. "Hey Mom, I've seen that lady having lunch with Dad before." "What?" "Last month, on my way home from school. In front of Caribou Coffee." My son's innocent testimony stabbed my heart even deeper. Everything connected. The increased overtime, weekend work, the inseparable phone, and this fake memory loss. One of the nurses approached me. "Mrs. Walker, may I speak with you?" Her name was Sarah, a veteran nurse in her mid-50s. "There's something that's been bothering me. That woman often visits outside of visiting hours." She gestured with her eyes toward Ashley walking down the hallway. Even for a doctor-patient relationship, it seems a bit unnatural. Tears rolled down my cheeks. My son gently held my hand. "Mom, don't cry." With those words, I made my decision. The evidence was sufficient. My son's testimony, the nurse's testimony, and above all, the truth I had seen with my own eyes. The time for the final confrontation had come. We arranged for private family time in the counseling room, just the three of us. My husband seemed to already realize his plan had been exposed. "Tell me everything." My voice was calmer than I expected. The relationship with Ashley began a year ago. It started during a business trip to Chicago. Then she became pregnant. When we consulted her brother, Dr. Martin. "And you came up with this fake memory loss plan." The plan was perfect. By faking memory loss, they could minimize asset division and achieve an amicable divorce. With the doctor's cooperation, they could create the appearance of an expert diagnosis. The doctor, who had initially opposed his sister's affair, decided to help after learning of the pregnancy. But why such a roundabout method? In a normal divorce, you'd get 50% of the assets. The settlement would be high. And my husband looked at Joshua. I'd be at a disadvantage in the custody battle. Our son silently stared at his father. His eyes held a mature understanding. I'll let go of the money. But were you planning to destroy your relationship with our son too? No, that's different. With Joshua, I wanted to maintain. Maintain what? My voice trembled slightly. Weekend visits, child support, I promise. Because he's important to me. Ironically, those words alone seemed sincere. Dad? Joshua quietly spoke up. Were you really pretending not to remember me? I'm sorry. You're a liar. Those words visibly distorted my husband's expression. For the first time, I saw what seemed like genuine emotion. Leaving the counseling room, my decision was already made. The next day, I contacted a lawyer and began preparing for divorce proceedings. I decided to handle everything legally, the settlement, custody issues, all of it. Ashley was waiting in the hallway. Her belly was unmistakably larger under her loose dress. We passed each other without exchanging words. That night, in the car ride home, I talked with Joshua. Mom, what's going to happen to us now? We're starting a new life. But don't worry, we have hope. I'm okay as long as I'm with you, Mom. My son's strength saved me. Looking at the streetlights blurred by tears, I resolved to overcome this trial. This isn't the end, but a new beginning. That's what I chose to believe. After the truth came to light, time seemed to accelerate. The first week felt like walking through fog. Every morning when I woke up, I thought, this might be a bad dream. But reality stood unforgivingly before us. Gathering evidence was easier than I expected. If anything, I was surprised by how many traces they had left. First, my son's testimony. Mom, I have photos. One day, Joshua brought his iPad. It contained several photos from last year's Christmas party. His father and Ashley smiling together. At the time, it seemed like an innocent snapshot. But looking at it now, the way their gazes met revealed their secret. I have this too. The next photo was from our baseball game at Target Field. In the background, a figure that appeared to be Ashley was captured. My son's innocent photography hobby had ironically preserved decisive evidence. Sarah, the nurse, provided more information. Here are the records of visits outside regular hours. Her private records detailed Ashley's visiting times. I felt it violated medical ethics. Her conscience helped reveal the truth. The relationship with Dr. Martin was also unusual. Another nurse testified. Personal relationships with patients' families are usually strictly limited. But as evidence accumulated, the full picture of their plan emerged. My husband and Ashley's affair had begun more than a year ago. Every Tuesday and Thursday, they met under the guise of overtime work. Weekend trips disguised as Chicago business trips. Everything had been meticulously planned. The pregnancy was discovered 2 months ago. When they consulted Ashley's brother, Dr. Martin, this plan was born. A normal divorce would be disadvantageous in terms of asset division. However, with a memory loss diagnosis, the situation would change. With the doctor's cooperation, it should have been a perfect plan. I began consulting with a lawyer. Jennifer Bryant, a divorce specialist who particularly excels in cases involving fraudulent acts. We have sufficient evidence. Her words gave me some comfort. Faking memory loss is a serious illegal act. If we can prove the doctor's involvement, it will strengthen our position further. The settlement demand was set at $500,000. The asset division could potentially be more favorable than initially planned. But for me, the most important issue was custody. I won't compromise on Joshua. Don't worry. With proof of the father's fraudulent actions, full custody is quite possible. Events began moving rapidly. First, a report to the hospital's ethics committee. Dr. Martin's actions were clear violations of medical ethics. His medical license was at risk. Next, a report to my husband's company. An inappropriate relationship with a superior violated company compliance rules. Disciplinary dismissal became a possibility. Finally, the formal divorce filing. It was submitted to the court with all the evidence attached. My final face-to-face meeting with my husband was in the court's mediation room. I admit everything. With an exhausted expression, my husband began his testimony. The relationship with Ashley, the fake memory loss, all of the plan. Ashley was waiting in another room. Her belly was now 7 months along. Yesterday's test revealed it was a boy. Do you have anything to say to me? After a long silence following my quiet question, my husband spoke. I'm sorry. To you, to our son. I was the worst husband and father. With those words, our 10 years of marriage flashed before my eyes. The happy days, the times we shared our dreams, the moments we celebrated our son's growth. Everything converged in this moment. Goodbye, Nathan. My voice was calmer than I expected. The mediation results were favorable to us. Afterward, our new life began. We rented a small apartment in northern Minneapolis, in a quiet residential area. 2 bedrooms, $1,500 monthly rent. Modest, but enough space for our fresh start. My freelance work is going well, with income actually higher than before. With increased requests from major publishers, my annual income is expected to exceed $100,000. My son has been surprisingly strong and wise. Mom, I like our new home, Joshua said with a smile on moving day. What about Dad? I'll see him sometimes. But I don't like liars. He's receiving counselor support at school. The teachers are very understanding, and his friendships continue unchanged. I, too, have slowly begun to look forward. 6 months have passed since the divorce. The autumn breeze signals the beginning of a new season. Recently, my old friend Caroline invited me to join her venture. I'm starting a new painting class. We could use your design talents. Weekend assistant teaching. New encounters and creative time. These are gradually healing my heart. Joshua continues playing baseball. Now I'm his practice partner. Mom, you throw pretty fast. Time with my son has become my most precious treasure. My husband, ex-husband and Ashley had their baby boy last month. They named him Liam, my son told me. Dad showed me a picture during our last visit. Hearing about this no longer pains my heart. Now, outside my window, the sunset is beautifully fading. As I sit at my desk working on a proposal for a new project, I reflect. Life takes unexpected turns. But I believe every path leads us to growth. Mom, what's for dinner? My son's voice calls from the kitchen. Well. Another page of our new life is about to begin.